Welcome to this explainer. All right, let's just jump right in, because today we are charting a seriously wild ride. We're looking at Microsoft's 25-plus year journey in the gaming space. It's really the story of how a massive underdog, a company known strictly for PC software like Windows, transformed into an absolute industry titan. And they did it by making a massive and incredibly risky bet on this concept of the connected console. We're going to trace that entire evolution, from its kind of messy beginnings all the way up to where they are today. Here's our roadmap for this journey. First, the direct Xbox gamble. Second, connecting players through Xbox Live. Third, the 360 highs and those infamous red rings. Fourth, the Xbox One stumble. And finally, a return to roots.
All right, part 1, the direct Xbox gamble, entering a market dominated by Sony and Nintendo. Let's set the scene by traveling all the way back to the late 90s.
Picture the gaming landscape back then. Sony's PlayStation and Nintendo were absolutely dominating the living room. There was really no room for anyone else. So you gotta ask yourself, how does a giant software company take on entrenched titans like that? Well, it actually started as a rogue project. A tiny four-man team inside Microsoft's DirectX division literally started tearing apart Dell laptops just to prototype a gaming machine. It was completely unconventional. The sheer ambition of this team was staggering. As Bill Gates famously noted back in 1999, our game designer likes the Sony machine. Microsoft saw what Sony was doing with the upcoming PlayStation 2, and their strategy was basically to mimic it, but then completely overpower it. They were aiming to build a machine with literally 3 times the performance of the PS2, and they were aiming it squarely at the hardcore gamer. When you look at the original Xbox specs against the competition, Microsoft made some seriously expensive, forward-thinking choices. While the PS2 and GameCube were still relying on those little memory cards, the Xbox threw in a massive built-in internal hard drive. But the wildest, most controversial inclusion, a built-in Ethernet port. They were basically betting the entire house that the future of gaming wasn't just about better graphics, but constant high-speed connectivity. Now, of course, not everything they did was super sleek. We have to talk about the Duke. This original controller was, well, it was absolutely massive. And the reason why is this classic hardware meets software mishap. The internal circuit board was designed way larger than expected by one team, so the poor hardware guys had to upsize the outer plastic shell just to fit the whole shebang inside. It was so incredibly bulky that creator Seamus Blackley literally had items like actual golf balls hurled at him during presentations by angry testers. They eventually swapped it out for the smaller Controller S, but man, the Duke remains a hilarious relic of their early learning curve. Moving to part 2, connecting players, Xbox Live, building the broadband vision. This is where that massive gamble on the Ethernet port really comes into focus. You have to remember, in the early 2000s, dial-up modems were still the norm. Even Bill Gates was initially hesitant to restrict the Xbox to broadband only, but they stuck to their guns. Tracing the timeline here, Microsoft kicked off the Xbox Live Beta in mid-2002 and officially launched it that November. It was a $49.99 starter kit, and it even included a headset. It was totally revolutionary to just boot up a console and talk to someone across the country. But the real game changer hit in November 2004 with Halo 2. Halo 2 didn't just use Xbox Live, it fundamentally defined what online console gaming would become for the rest of time. It introduced automated matchmaking and online party lobbies. These are features we completely take for granted today, right? Before this, you actually had to manually hunt through massive lists of servers to find a game. Halo 2 made the whole thing seamless, and because of that, it doubled Xbox Live's membership in under a year. The connected console era had officially truly arrived. All right, on to part 3, 360 highs and red rings, the peaks of the digital revolution and a billion-dollar hardware disaster. This next generation is a story of extreme, high-contrast highs and lows. On the software side, things were absolutely skyrocketing. By 2013, Xbox Live had exploded to an incredible 46 million global users. When the Xbox 360 launched in 2005, it was designed around this idea of constant online awareness right from day one. They pioneered digital storefronts, downloadable content, Netflix streaming right to your TV, and that iconic Blades user interface. The 360 truly realized Microsoft's vision of the ultimate living room entertainment hub. But then there was the hardware. The infamous Red Ring of Death, or ROD. Early Xbox 360s were failing at an absolutely astonishing rate. Players would be mid-game, suddenly the screen would freeze, maybe turn into a weird checkerboard, and then the console would reboot with 3 flashing red lights on the power button, just completely dead. There were other nightmares too, like the E74 error and DVD drives that literally scratched game discs to shreds simply because Microsoft opted not to spend 50 cents per unit on protective internal bumpers. Just crazy. The sheer scale of this failure was sickening for the company. Just look at this number. $1.15 billion. That's billion with a B. That is the cost Microsoft had to absorb to extend the console's warranty to 3 years and fix the red ring issue. Former executive Peter Moore actually recalled a conversation with CEO Steve Ballmer, explaining that an enormous chunk of this money, like $240 million, was literally just the FedEx shipping costs of sending empty boxes to angry customers and shipping the repaired consoles back.
For years, wild rumors swirled about what actually caused the red ring. The most common myth was that European regulations forced Microsoft to use brittle, lead-free solder on the motherboard. But recent documentaries finally revealed the real engineering failure. The true culprit? Thermal stress from the console constantly heating up and cooling down. This caused high lead C-force solder bumps inside the GPU chip packaging to crack. So it wasn't a simple overheating problem. It was actually a fundamental flaw in the chip's internal structure that broke connections over time. A fascinating yet catastrophic detail.
Which brings us to part 4, the Xbox One stumble, losing the core audience and course correcting. So Microsoft survived the red ring, but their next move alienated their core fan base right out of the gate. When the Xbox One was first announced in 2013, their initial vision was incredibly restrictive. Microsoft basically mandated that a Kinect camera had to be plugged in at all times, and they instituted a 24-hour online DRM check-in. This meant if your home internet went down, your physical disk-based games wouldn't play. No way. The gamer reality? A massive, immediate outcry. The backlash was so intense that Microsoft was forced into a rapid, pretty embarrassing policy reversal before the console even hit store shelves. But honestly, the damage to the brand was already done. To dig themselves out of this massive hole, Microsoft spent the rest of the generation pivoting really hard toward pro-consumer software features. They introduced backward compatibility so you could finally play your old original Xbox and 360 games on the new hardware. They launched Play Anywhere, which brilliantly bridged the gap between PC and console gaming. And crucially, they started leaning heavily into the cloud. The ultimate result of that pivot? Xbox Game Pass. Launched basically as the Netflix for games, this subscription service became the true culmination of their decades-long connected console vision. It single-handedly shifted the industry paradigm away from physical game ownership and almost entirely into digital, cloud-supported subscriptions. It was a real game changer. And this brings us up to the present day. Part 5, a return to roots, the 2026 rebrand under CEO Asha Sharma. We're looking at April 2026 and the sweeping internal shifts initiated by the new CEO. There's a really stark shift in messaging happening right now. In a recent internal memo, Sharma declared the absolute death of recent marketing pushes like Microsoft Gaming and that highly criticized everything is an Xbox campaign. As she stated, Xbox needs to be our identity. We are going back to where we started and changing our team's name. They realized that diluting the brand into just another generic Microsoft cloud service was seriously hurting them. They needed to get back to what made them a powerhouse in the living room in the first place. And that brings us to their next chapter. The entire gaming division is officially rebranding back to simply Xbox. The team behind Halo, now called Halo Studios, is making a clean break from their old proprietary Slipspace engine and shifting all development to the industry-standard Unreal Engine 5. Combine that with highly anticipated upcoming releases of Fable and Gears of War, and you can see the brand is aggressively gearing up for a major second wind. So we end on this final thought. From literally hacking apart Dell laptops to introduce a single Ethernet port gamble, to weathering billion-dollar hardware failures, to pioneering the digital subscription future we live in today, it has been an incredible timeline. Will the next 25 years of the connected console under this new leadership be as wild as the first? Only time will tell, but the foundation they built undeniably changed gaming forever. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.